Welcome back, War Robots fans. This is Cinco, and in this video I'm going to teach you how I play beacon games, the phases of a beacon game, and how to set up your hangar for each phase. I've played in and studied thousands of games to come up with this data for this breakdown, so let's get to it. Before we start talking about winning beacon games, we need to start talking about the phases of a beacon game. And the phases of a beacon game are important because that'll really determine on what the other team's going to be dropping and what you should be dropping to counter that. So the first phase of the game is the first drop. This is the first bot you're going to drop in the game to capture beacons and or counter their first drop bots. Second bot is very similar. That's the second bot you're going to drop into a game. Usually you're going to have the first and the second bot defined before the game for your start for whatever map you're dropping on. The third phase in a beacon game is, of course, the first Titan. And this is really when the other team spawns their first Titan. It's a really important part of the game because it tells you if your Titan isn't charged, you need to get it charged, and or you need to start pressing to get more energy for your Titan charge. The fourth phase of a beacon game is the Titan phase. This is when almost everybody either has a Titan in the game or has it charged or has dropped it and lost it already. And then the fifth phase is the end game. Really, this is when almost all the Titans have been deployed, and if it gets this far, it's probably a close game and there's a battle for beacon clock left remaining in the game. The first drop phase of the beacon game is really important, especially if it's beacon rush. The goals you want to have with this first phase is to capture 2 beacons. You really want to get 2. You want to kill the first drops for the other team, and you really want to stop them from advancing to your side of the map. Map control is very important in War Robots. When you're building your hangar for this first drop, you should really be focusing on speed, burst damage per second, and survival so you can capture those beacons while eliminating the enemy bots. These are the best bots you'll usually see or that you can have for a first drop. Typically, you'll see Phantoms with either Scourge, Spark, or Igniter, Blaze, or Cryo, Rhyme starting the games and really rushing to that center beacon after capturing their home beacon. Another good bot for the first drop is the Leech, piloted by Thomas Mindreed, and with 4 medium weapons, you can't really go wrong, but the meta right now is Cryos, Igniters, or Scourges. Another great first drop bot is the Ravana with the Transcendence ability and Phase Shift. It's really able to contest a beacon for a long time at the beginning of a game till you can get help. Usually on Ravanas, you're going to see a set of Cryos or Storms or a combination of both. And of course, another great bot to drop first is the Aljun. When I drop an Aljun first, I like to use it with Redeemers. I definitely wouldn't drop an Aljun first unless I had 2 or 3 of them in my hangar because they're really well suited for the later game phases. One of the bots you don't want to run, or a combination of bots you don't want to run, is really Ares and or other Pantheon bots. With all the other bots that are first drops like Phantoms, Leeches, Ravanas, you're really exposed when you're in one of those Pantheon bots. In phase 2, after you die in your first drop, you have a little bit different of a set of goals. You really want to hold the beacons you have, stop the enemy team from advancing. Hopefully your team has 3 beacons and you want to keep them at the beacons that they have. Another goal you have for this second phase is to really charge your Titan, and if you have a chance, you want to advance towards their beacons to take a 3rd or 4th, depending on how many beacons you have. Your focus for the second phase is really on survival and maximizing your sustained DPS. That's what I recommend and why I recommend the next set of bots for the second phase. Based on the data I did in my last video, plus what I'm seeing around Champion League, this is pretty much the list of bots that people are dropping second. People are dropping Leeches to really do a lot of damage while being a very survivable bot. Traditionalist Falcons are really getting more and more popular in this phase of the game. You really can't use them later than this in the game. Fenrir, especially with the Wodenson pilot, is really tough to kill in this part of the game just because of the sheer amount of hit points that it has. Of course, Ravana, Aljun, and Phantoms are all still very viable in phase 2. Now that you're in phase 3, you've heard or you've seen the other team drop a Titan. It's really important that you start charging yours and be more aggressive, because as the game goes on, your second bot will lose value because the Titans are going to be more and more strong compared to the bots you're running. So first thing, you want to charge that Titan up. You want to counter the enemy Titan if possible, and you definitely want to continue to defend the beacons that you currently have, as well as be aggressive in terms of pressuring the other team's beacons. The focus for your bots in this part of the game is really on Titan counters, countering those early Titans, as well as really aggressively playing to really charge up your Titan fast. I can't emphasize that enough, how important it is for once the other Titans are in the game, you have yours ready to go. Phase 3 is a relatively short phase in the game because it's really focused around that time when the Titans first start spawning. Really, as you get into phase 4, you need to make some decisions on whether you're going to drop your own Titan, you're going to counter enemy Titans, you're going to defend beacons, or you're going to become a Titan protector for your team's Titans. If you're not going to spawn your Titan, the focus for your bots really needs to be in countering Titans and, of course, using quantum radar. Because stage 4 or phase 4 is so long and really dominating the majority of the game now in the current War Robots meta, you have a lot of options. So for option 1, it's drop your Titan. If you have a really strong Titan, drop it. If your team has less than 2 Titans on the field, drop it. After that, you really have to start thinking about how you can best help your team, and here are the other options. As I alluded to, option 2 for phase 4 in the Titan phase is countering Titans. Countering Titans becomes a really important thing when you have some good Titans on your team. When you want to counter Titans is when there are 2 or more Titans on your team on the map. Then we really don't need to add more Titans because it'll be harder to counter what the other team is doing. If your Titan is weak, you probably don't want to drop it at this point of the game. It's just going to get ripped up by those other Titans. And if you run into an opponent with a really strong maxed out Titan, you definitely don't want to start running your Titan. Unless, of course, you have a maxed out Titan of your own. So if you're going to start countering Titans, there's nowhere else to start but trying to counter an Ao Ming, which admittedly is hard to counter. These are just the best recommendations I have, and these are the best tools for the job right now. So an Ao Jun with Glaciers, Avengers, Calamities, or Vipers will do a pretty good job at doing a decent amount of damage to an Ao Jun in a relatively short amount of time. I do love using a Nightingale against an Ao Ming. When my Ao Ming is up, I really despise Nightingales, so it's really annoying and can get an Ao Ming off its game if you use a Nightingale. Ares really isn't used enough against Ao Mings. I really like using it with Hussars or Sparks and Scourges to really knock down the Ao Ming. It does take a while to do a big amount of damage in an Ares, but still your shield is really useful. Raker, again, in an Ao Ming, I can speak from experience, it's really annoying to get suppressed over and over again, so the Raker is actually pretty valuable against an Ao Ming. And really any bot with over 600 meter weapons, even say a Griffin with full maxed out mollets, will be annoying if you keep using it and keep focusing on an Ao Ming. It can really be annoying to face 2 or 3 Griffins with mollets if you're in a Ming. Similar to the Ao Ming, the Arthur counters start with the Ao Juns using Glaciers and Avengers, but instead of using the Calamities and or the Vipers, we're going to sub in Embers and Exodus because of the fire / explosive damage. Also, you want to counter Arthurs by using a Nightingale from behind. I can tell you that you really want to turn Arthurs around and shoot them from multiple directions as much as possible. You can even shoot them from the side. As long as you're not directly in front of them, you can get some good angles. And really any fire and explosive weapons are going to work well on an Arthur, whether they be cryos, igniters, or even tridents will work well on an Arthur. Kid Titans aren't super hard to counter, but why not use an Ao Jun or a Nightingale? And if you're using anything else, fire when the weapon is lowered, and really try to keep the range outside of 500 meters. It's really rare for somebody to be using a kid to have 600 meter range. Another role you can play during this phase 4 is countering Aojuns. I don't know why, but this is probably the most satisfactory role that I have to play when I'm in this Titan phase. I love killing Titans that are chasing after my team's Titans. So countering Aojuns, you're going to protect your Titans, you're going to defend your beacons, you're really going to try to restrict their flight to keep them on the ground and scare them out of the air. The bots you're going to use for this are Aojun, specifically with the Yangli pilot if you have them. Ares and Hades are great options with Hussars or Scourges. Leech also with Scourges is a great option. Basically anything with Quantum Radar, Calamity, Scourges or Sparks, or Quantum Radar with Dragoons, Hussars, and Marquesses are going to do a great job. Another option I suggest for this Titan phase of the game is drop a Loki, and that's really when you have, 3 to 4 Titans up in the air as Ao-Mings. It's a lot more effective against Ao-Mings than either kids or Arthurs because they can punt you out of beacons. But I really suggest a Loki during this part of the game. It is a game changer and sometimes even forces players to drop their Titans with health left to get a different bot in the game to counter a Loki. You do have to be careful when you drop a Loki that there aren't Aojuns in the game running anti-stealth, chasing you around, because that's the best way to get killed in a Loki fast. That brings us to phase 5, which is the end game. Not all games last long enough to get to this, but really it's the phase of the game where there's some Titans left. It's a close game. There's beacons to capture. You got to protect the beacons you already have and try to keep the Titans you have, especially if you have Ao-Ming up with the Dragoon variants to try to clear off the beacons before people can cap them. You really want to focus your bots on things that can defend beacons, especially with either Pantheon shields, stealth to contest beacons, and of course you want Quantum Radar to stop people with stealth from capping the beacons you already have. For this 5th phase of a beacon game, I recommend Aojun, Loki, and Nightingale, specifically for the stealth to capture beacons that the other team has, and you can also contest beacons that you have. Other options are Ravana and Ares because they can stay alive because of the shield and the phase shifting abilities to really contest and stay in a beacon long enough even when being shot at by Ao-Mings. Well, that wraps it up for this video. I'm Cinco and I hope you like the content. If you did like it, please comment, like, and or subscribe. See you again next time.